All right, so we're picking back up here with section 5. This should be our last one of this focus on revolutions and political ideologies, and then we'll do one or two on romantic art and literature coming up. So, revolutions of 1848 were nicknamed the springtime of the people. Well, springtime, that's what's going on right now. You start to see birds chirping and trees growing and budding and flowers blooming, and that's what people felt like these revolutions of 1848 would do. Again, none of the revolutions of 1830 and 1848 were ultimately successful at the time, but a lot of people think that this sowed the seeds of the growth of the Republic movement within Europe. So it was the watershed political event of the 19th century because of what it will lead to. 1848 revolutions were influenced by nationalism, liberalism, romanticism, as well as economic dislocation and instability. So basically, everything that influenced other revolutions with the exception of romanticism. Only Britain and Russia avoided significant upheaval. Why? In Britain, they are making their liberal reform changes through politics, through making laws, through voting people into office that serve your interests and will make liberal reforms. Russia, they're very, very backwards, very conservative, being ruled by an iron-fisted czar. They're not going to have all the revolutionary activity because they squelch it, they destroy it with violence if there's any revolutionary or nationalistic activity. So what will happen as a result of the revolutions of 1848 will result in the end of serfdom in Austria and Germany, universal male suffrage in France, parliaments established in Germany, and so on. I love this quote down here by a historian named Trevelyan. He says, "This is the turning point at which history failed to turn." So it's like we're right on the verge of making Europe a Republican-friendly place, but we don't quite turn that corner. Good quote. So France, few important guys we got going on in France, leading them towards republicanism. We've got the February Revolution in 1848. Working class liberals were working class and liberals were unhappy with King Louis Philippe. Gee, that's weird. France got exactly what it wanted. They loved him, called him the citizen king because he was supposedly in favor of all citizens. Called him the bourgeoisie king because he was in favor of business, was going to make the economy better. And after 18 short years, they're sick of Louis Philippe and they went rid of him. So his minister there at the top right was Francois Guizot. A lot of people were unhappy with him because the middle class said that he wasn't doing enough to help workers, and the liberals that were part of the upper class said that he was doing too much to help workers and was ignoring the wealthy man, the man of wealth that was really driving the French economy. So the king got forced to abdicate in February of 1848. Louis Blanc is this guy over here on the bottom right. He's a socialist thinker who led working classes, and he's demanded work for the unemployed. We're starting to veer into socialism. And there's a book that will come out in the mid-1800s we're going to talk about, written by Karl Marx, that's going to really put into words and into text what a lot of people are thinking throughout Europe as far as socialism and communism goes. National workshops were created to provide work for the unemployed. Some reforms they'll make in 1848, they abolished slavery fully. It was abolished in mainland France earlier on in the 1830s, fully throughout their empire by 1848. It had pretty much already gone away after they had gotten rid of it in mainland France in 1831, but now it was official. There was a 10-hour workday limit in Paris, and they abolished the death penalty. Abolition of the death penalty is one of these real liberal ideas. I'm not sure if it's a real progressive thing or not. I don't know if it solves problems or not. You'll see some great countries that still have it like we do, and a lot of Europe has abolished it. Well, at this point in history, like at this point in 2015, I don't know of any place in Europe that still uses it. Russia may. Not sure. So Paris, well, to the barricades again. They chanted that during the revolutions of 1830 with our picture of liberty leading the people by Eugene Delacroix, and now we're going to the barricades again. So we're revolting again. So June Day's Revolution, 1848, marked beginning of class warfare. So Les Mis, these revolutions, 1830 and 1848, will kind of inspire Les Miserables. Election of 1848, Louis Napoleon defeated a man named Cavaignac and became president of the Republic. Yes, Louis Napoleon. He is a relative of the Napoleon. 1852, after he gets elected in 1848, he will become, 4 years later, basically call himself Emperor Napoleon III and call this the Second French Empire. First French Empire would have been during the French Revolution. This is the second one. Yes, the Concert of Vienna, the Congress of Vienna and the Concert of Europe said, no more Napoleon shall ever rule, no more Bonapartes ever to ascend any place in Europe. Well, what are you going to do if you're an outside country looking in when the French elect a Napoleon descendant? You're going to tell them that they can't have who they elected in for power? And again, the French they want something, they get it. They voted 1,000,000 to 1,000 basically to bring in Napoleon as emperor. That ended up kind of going down in flames. They were unhappy with Charles X, unhappy with him, and so they replaced him with Louis Philippe, and then they got unhappy with him, and now they're going to elect a guy, and then he becomes emperor 4 years later. So they are very, very fickle people, tough to govern. So he will become Emperor Napoleon III of the Second French Empire. So the Second French Republic will rule for about 4 years, a little bit more. General Louis Cavaignac was the leader of the army, and he will assume dictatorial powers for a bit and crush a revolt that will be led against all this chaos and disorganization with voting between he and Louis Napoleon, and then Napoleon becomes Napoleon III once he does get elected and becomes the emperor. So President Louis Napoleon, he's president at first in 1848, and so he will eventually take that title of emperor. The December election, the law and order candidate was Louis Napoleon. He defeated Cavaignac. People viewed Cavaignac as dangerous because he was a general in the army, and they feared a military dictatorship, which is what they were probably going to get. So whenever Louis Napoleon wins this election against Cavaignac, people were voting for the guy that they thought represented democratic process and republicanism. He will go against their wishes. He will disband the National Assembly and hold new elections, and his government will use force against dissenters just as they feared Cavaignac would do. So in 1851, he holds a coup d'etat. Usually you're overthrowing the entire government with a coup d'etat. He's overthrowing all the people of government that he's supposed to be sharing power with, and he proclaims it a Second French Empire, and that he's a hereditary emperor, basically. They did a national plebiscite vote just like Napoleon before him. His uncle did. So he's the nephew of Napoleon. So France, the great sea snake, we're seeing all these other European leaders in a boat, and we're seeing France with the old Roman senator's hat on as the giant sea serpent. And what this means is France is rocking the boat. They are about to upset balance of power, and all these other European countries are going to probably have to do something again to stop balance of power from being disrupted by France. So, Centers of Revolution, 1848. Territories of revolt are in green. Major areas of revolt are these little icons, whatever you want to call them here. German Confederation, what used to be the Holy Roman Empire, still there, still trying to figure itself out, sort itself out. So you can see a lot of mainland Europe is affected by these revolutions of 1848. In Italy, Giuseppe Mazzini will establish the Roman Republic in 1849. He's the guy that we learned about in the section previous to this one, that he was leading Young Italy and the Carbonari. He was protected by Giuseppe Garibaldi and his forces. Garibaldi will be the military leader, and he will be the guy that will help protect Giuseppe Mazzini and his forces as they're trying to unite all these city-states that are still there from the Italian Renaissance days into one Italy. And right here, that makes it tough because Lombardy and Venetia are under Austrian control. So the failures of the revolutions in Italy resulted in conservative victory. They won't be successful at first. It won't happen full success until 1871, and that's a date that we already know. Rural people did not support the revolutions because it was hard to get word out to them, and they were afraid that they would be dominated by city folk if they did join in these revolutions. Revolution is more of a city thing than a rural thing. So the revolutions weren't united yet, but they are building upon that. But these Italian leaders, 1848, here we got Garibaldi. There's Mazzini. We've seen him before. Here's Pope Pius IX. All right. In Austria, we've got a new guy, new Austrian emperor. His name will be Franz Joseph I. One real interesting thing about him, you can see those dates, 1848 to 1916. He is going to be the guy that is the leader of Austria-Hungary whenever they go into World War I. He'll be ousted in 1916. So it's like, he's cool to me because he's a gap bridger. He started in 1848, back in all this time that really seems very far off, very unmodern, very ancient to us. But he will still be in charge of Austria, and he's a Habsburg all the way up until World War I. Franz Joseph I, and I'll show you pictures of him as an old man in World War I right before he's ousted, the Habsburgs crumble, and he passes away. So that's pretty cool that he's going to rule from this time that it seems all old, and we've got him being painted here to, I'm going to show you a photo of him. The assassination of his nephew is going to lead us into World War I. So Austria, the Habsburg Empire was vulnerable to the revolutionary challenge of nationalists because they were so fragmented, so many different ethnicities and religions and ideologies existed there. The Austrian Empire in 1848, this is what it looked like. Northeastern Italy, way on over here. They kind of were dominating the Balkan Empire up to what the Ottoman Empire had. And you can see all kinds of different ethnicities, all kinds of different religions, all kinds of different beliefs resided in Austria. In Hungary, we're going to have this guy here named Louis Kossuth. He was a Hungarian leader. You're going to see this word right here, Magyar. Whenever you see Magyar, all that usually means is like Hungarian nobility. So a Magyar is a Hungarian nobility. So the Austrian army had to basically put down some Hungarian revolts against them. Hungary is wanting to fight for its own empire, and that's one of the reasons why in World War I it won't just be Austria, it'll be called Austria-Hungary, because Hungary will make a big enough stink and a big enough case for itself that it gets kind of joint ownership of this empire. So the Habsburgs restored royal absolutism to all of Hungary and all of their empire in Austria. There we have Austrian students forming a militia. Here we have a little painting of the Hungarian Revolution and Louis Kossuth. In Bohemia, we have the Prague Conference, 1848. It developed the notion of Austro-Slavism, which was basically the right of Slavs to rule themselves within Austria, and all this stuff is sowing seeds for World War I. Germanic states, we got the revolutions inspired by the 1848 revolutions in France, because when France sneezes, all of Europe catches a cold. So liberals demanded constitutional government and a union or federation of states. The Frankfurt Parliament, May 1848. Liberal leaders will call for elections to a constituent assembly and for all these states to unify into the Bund officially. So Frederick William IV is a guy that will be ruling Prussia during this time. He rejected this liberal constitution because he didn't want challenge to his power, and he claimed divine right of kings. And this was not a very popular viewpoint at this point in the mid-1800s. Divine right had been gone since the Enlightenment, since the mid-1700s. Everybody thought it was rubbish, it was hogwash, but he still tried to claim it. And whenever he rejected this new liberal constitution, he said that he would not accept the crown from the gutter. What he meant by that was, I'm not going to let the common people tell me what kind of government I'm ruling in and how much power I can and cannot have. I don't accept the crown from the gutter. I don't accept my power from the gutter. I accept my power from God. So one thing that we need to know under him is the humiliation of Olmütz. Prussia dropped the plan to unify Germany, leaving Austria as the dominant German state in the Bund. There was a plan to unite Prussia, the Germanic states, and Austria into one Germanic empire. And it fell through because Prussia and Austria kept bickering with each other over who would lead that and who was most important. So Prussia dropped out of the humiliation of Olmütz, or that was the humiliation of Olmütz when they dropped out of these negotiations. And that leaves Austria as the dominant power within the Germanic Bund. Prussia will seek revenge for Austria ticking them off and making them leave in 1866, the Austro-Prussian War. So evaluation of the revolutions of 1848, liberalism and nationalism and socialism made some gains, but were largely kept in check by conservatives. Positive aspects, we will get universal male suffrage in France. We will get serfdom abolished in Austria and the Germanic states. We will establish a parliament in Prussia, which will go on to be the Reichstag in Germany, which is the German parliament. None of the revolutions of 1830 or 1848 were totally successful. Why? Because we didn't totally get republics out of them, but we did start to lead that way. That was important. Setting the stage for united Germany. Got the Germanic Confederation, got these revolts going on, the struggle between Prussia and Austria. Here just shows some different political ideologies within this Germanic Confederation. Germany is influenced by other revolutions and Romanticism. They were influenced by the French Revolution. They were influenced by what happened with the Second French Empire and Napoleon. They were influenced by Johann Gottfried von Herder, who we've talked about before as a father of nationalism. Italy and Romanticism, they were led by Mazzini and Garibaldi. We talked about them a little bit. Socialism is going to be a very, very important ideology. Socialists wanted to create a society that was worker-friendly. In fact, their calling card motto will be, "Workers of the world unite." And what socialists believed was this was an idea that could go to literally every corner of the world and would eventually engulf the entire world, because every part of the world has poor, illiterate, uneducated, uninvolved in politics workers that need to be spoken for and need to have a say in politics. So a lot of things will lead to this. All the crappy treatment of workers that we see during the Industrial Revolution will lead to this. People say that capitalism and mercantilism are evil and it exploits workers, and that's true to an extent. This factory lifestyle is killing people, and it's wrong, and that's going to lead to socialism. And just the common man's going to want a word in politics. That's going to lead to socialism. So Louis Blanc was an early French socialist. He will play a big role in the June Days Revolution in Paris. We've got a guy named Proudhon, who will write a book, What is Property?, talking about that all property should be property of the state and everybody should share it, communal ownership of property, no private ownership of property. Charles Fourier will be another early French thinker who has socialist ideas. He described a socialist as a utopian environment. So Marxism and communism and scientific socialism will all go together. Here's Karl Marx. You probably know him from civics. He will write the Communist Manifesto, and he will also join forces with this guy, Friedrich Engels. They are both German thinkers, and they think that socialism is the way to go. Communist Manifesto 1848 was Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations was the Bible of capitalism. This book is the Bible of communism. So the Communist Manifesto of 1848 is considered the Bible of communism. It lays out the blueprint for what a communist government should be. Communism is a government. It is a philosophical ideology. It is also an economic system. It's all these things rolled up into one. And so it was decided by Marx that private property and the desire for wealth and all this was leading to wars, and all of history could be explained through class struggle. And honestly, all of history can be explained through class struggle. We can look back at the French Revolution and know that to be true as well. That was one of the major causes of the French Revolution. But the Communist Manifesto will talk about the government need to take over everything, take over factories, take over healthcare, take over religion, take over ownership of all land. Communal ownership. Everybody has a job. Everybody has equal wages. There's no upper class, but there's no low class either. We've got one big, broad middle class. Nobody has a lot, but nobody has a little either. Everybody has just right. You don't have to keep up with your neighbor. These are all ideas of communism. Communism on paper doesn't sound like a terrible idea, but in practice, when it's put into practice, it never works. It hardly ever works. You could look and say right now, well, China's working. They're doing really well. We owe them trillions of dollars. Yeah, they modified from pure communism. They don't use or employ pure communism. They have a mixed economy, which has some capitalistic ideas brought into it. So communism was thought it would be a utopian society where everybody's happy. No. Why? Because it kills initiative. Why in the world would you work really hard knowing that the government is going to take one of your ideas for a new invention or a new disease prevention method, and they're not going to pay you crap for it? Why would you bust your butt working your butt off in a factory, working 10 hours a day to produce whatever it is you're producing, whenever the guy beside you is hardly doing anything and he's getting paid the same? So it stifles creativity. It stifles hard work. It's not realistic. It doesn't reward those who can. It makes those who can and will support those who can't and won't. And that's why it does not ever work. And it always has to be modified. That's why the Soviet Union collapsed. That's why China has had to kind of tweak what they're doing. So socialism was inevitable. These communists believe that the entire world has to go communist in order for their thought process and their way of life to be safe. Almost like what the French thought during the French Revolution. The belief was there were poor workers of all countries throughout the world, and that they would never be safe until they united, and that's why their motto was working men of all countries unite. They wanted to create a classless society, and they wanted to dismantle capitalism. That's why capitalism and communism were always at odds with each other. The Soviet Union had the perfect enemy for us during the Cold War because we were just total polar opposites during that time. One big thing that communism had going for them, they reached out to women. They viewed women, as insulting as this is, as another worker, but at least women were viewed as equal, all right? And they didn't have religion, so they didn't have this basis to be able to treat women as second-class citizens. So a lot of women that were workers did like communism because they were viewed as just another worker. They weren't viewed as, a second-class citizen that should be oppressed and should just be a domestic servant and just be there to help their man and raise their babies and make unequal wages and so on. Communism reached out to women, and that was one thing that it got right, and one thing that really did get a lot of traction, especially with women. They wanted women to be able to have the exact same rights as men because they were just viewed as another worker. You as women could work just as hard as a man could in a factory. So Marxism was an atheistic philosophy. Karl Marx has a very famous quote where he once said, "Religion is the opiate of the masses." An opiate is a painkiller. Religion kills pain, according to Karl Marx. If you abolish it, then you don't have people tied to all these ancient traditions, tied to putting women in their place, so to speak, tied to all this entitlement. Everybody will work for everything that they've got, and there will be no religion to put you into a certain place if you're a woman or a poor person. That was the idea. We'll pick up there. We finally finished Ideologies and Upheavals and all this revolutionary stuff. The next one or two, depending on how fast I can get through them, will all be about romantic art and literature. We'll look at a bunch of art and talk about why it's really famous and important. I really like romantic art. It's good. If you like the Renaissance, you'll enjoy it as well. Cheers.